All right, let's get through this Google Doc.
Got a lot of stuff today.
Yeah, we always have a lot of stuff, Reed.
But there's not a lot of filler today. I feel like I did a good job. We got a couple little tidbits at the end, but it's a lot of XFL stuff. We got fan controlled football coming up. We've got Spring League, our big update about our big bombshell episode last week. So a lot of stuff to get to.
All right, so let's get into it, huh? PJ Walker, of course, started this last week for the Carolina Panthers. We got Sheena Quick coming up here in just a second to talk about that. Was there something else you wanted to talk about before that, though? Was there something that was cooler than PJ Walker starting? I mean, I think maybe it might have been cooler, but I don't know. It's your call.
No, I think PJ was really exciting. It was. Was I supposed to? Where am I supposed to go with this?
Fine.
You want to talk about the Sounders winning the playoffs?
No, that's not the coolest thing that happened, I think.
Oh, I know where you're going, Paul. Yeah,
that's
Paul.
Not the coolest thing that happened.
We got Paul, Mr. Celebrity, here on the podcast. We'll get to that.
Okay.
Let's get all the PJ stuff out. So Sunday morning was crazy. I'm sitting there running. It's like an hour before the game. I see on Twitter, Teddy's starting, and we're all like lamenting, and then Teddy's not starting, and we're all and it was crazy. And I told Sheena on the thing, it was like a mad sweat for me to try to find like a feed of this game. Like I texted you, I'm like, how do people watch these games? Like I would have paid any amount of money, $100 for the month just to be able to get those games. And I found like NFLBite.com and then like this stream.
Well, check your computer afterward for like viruses.
I asked one of the XFL News Hub writers, I think Matthew suggested that, and I said, should I use an incognito browser when I go on here to like? But I got it on my iPad and then airstreamed it to the TV, and I was able to watch it, and it was exciting. Did you watch the game? What did you think?
I watched bits and pieces. I was kind of like busy handling some other stuff that I had going around my house because I'm like reorganizing everything. It's still always, people make fun of my office for constantly being in a flux of construction, but I think I've got it this time. I think I got it figured out, and this is going to look a lot different coming up in the upcoming weeks. But from what I saw some great stuff. I did see some issues. I saw that one of those red zone interceptions. There were two, I believe. I saw one of those red zone interceptions. I was like, come on, PJ. It's like a feel good story. Everybody's rooting for this guy. Everybody's rooting for this guy, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, years and years, he got cut like a dozen times, started, went to the XFL, came back. I will say a couple tidbits. So after the game, our friend Michael Payne tweeted at me, and he said, he had built like a custom PJ Walker Carolina jersey, right? And he was like, hey, Reed, like, do you want to pop on this? And so I didn't realize that he had built it, and I went on to the Panthers, and the Panthers had a PJ Walker, I don't know how new it is, number 6 jersey. And I popped on that. So I think it's coming Monday. I got my PJ Walker Carolina Panthers jersey. I'm very excited about it. Like a practice one. I mean, it's not like a $400 jersey. It's like like the mesh ones. But then my other tidbit was, so I was kind of on like a trend that night. And so I was Googling and I was trying to find like other PJ Walker merch, and I found this like sketch Chinese site, and they have a PJ Walker Houston Roughnecks jersey for like $35. And so I was over and I was watching the pay-per-view with Michael. We were talking about everything, Survivor Series. And I said, well, like you pay through the site, you pay through PayPal. So like I'm protected, like my credit card information is protected. Like worst case, I'm at $35 and then PayPal reimburses me. So I took a flyer on that. It could be like 6 months. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I have a PJ Walker Carolina jersey, but then I also have a PJ Walker Houston Roughnecks. Like I'm very excited.
How do you equate that? Because you're Dragons, Mark. How do you have a Roughnecks jersey in your collection now?
It was tough, but it's XFL, man. Like it's XFL. I'll still be wearing the Dragon stuff to the game, but I think for the podcast, I'm like, dude, basically at this point, I'm just paying for bits for the podcast. I'm like, if I can get a PJ Walker jersey, that's it. That's 5 minutes on the podcast. I'm just trying to buy some fun stuff.
So after the game, PJ Walker, of course, talks to Fox Sports on air, and let's come into that and just talking about his
journey.
his journey, so to say.
All right, PJ Walker, you told me before this game that you've been waiting your whole life for this moment. You didn't even know you were going to start until about 90 minutes before. Let's just start with how it felt out there.
It felt amazing just to get an opportunity to go out there and play with the guys. All week I've been preparing myself as a starter. Just in case my number was called, I just go out there and step up for the guys.
PJ, I know you don't need me to tell you your history, but for everyone listening, it's quite a big one between being undrafted, being a practice squad guy for 2 years, being cut 12 times, the XFL. What did this mean to you today?
It meant the world. It meant the world to me today. Just to be out here with these guys, man, and just to come out here and get a win, it feels great. I credit my teammates. Our defense played a hell of a game. The offensive guys stepped up and made plays. So just to come out here with these guys and get this win means the world to me.
I'll let you get in there. PJ, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just the nicest guy. Just the nicest guy.
It's hard to root against him. It's like we said before, we've said on the week before, how this could end up becoming like a Disney-like story, how this guy who's been cut 12 times, it's hard to root against a guy like this. It really is. And it's a really good feel-good story for Carolina coming into the season. They haven't had the best, record. They haven't had the best time. They've gone through some definite injury issues. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's out again this week coming up. That's their superstar. And it's a good feel-good story that I think we need in this time and day where the pandemic is ruining everything for us, and we've got feel-good stories like PJ Walker. So we want to congratulate PJ. Great work this last week, and I'm glad to hear that he's embracing his role and he's ready whenever his number's called.
I will say the biggest takeaway for me, honestly, of all of this, and we've been talking about it in the chats and stuff, and I've tweeted about it. Really surprising that no one from current XFL management congratulated PJ. You sent out a tweet. It is crazy to me. The Rock did a thing a couple weeks ago where I think Bleacher Report or something was talking about PJ's journey and all the years, and the Rock retweeted and was like, well, that's why I bought the league, is because guys like PJ. And I'm like, man, the fact that you didn't, and Mike Mitchell, we were talking online, and he said that basically the XFL is just such a skeleton crew right now that there just was nobody there to manage social media on that day. I'm like, I don't care, man. It was a big deal. It was your star XFL quarterback got started the game for the NFL. I mean, I just can't believe it. And got the win. So I was pretty surprised about that. Maybe we can talk about some of the other Rock's social media forte after we talk to Sheena. Does that sound like a good plan?
That sounds like a good plan. It just to your point, that guy was the face of the XFL. It really goes to show that this was a success in some aspects, even though it got shut down early in bankruptcy and all the litigation that's going on between Vince and Oliver Luck right now. But PJ Walker having a successful day last Sunday goes to show that this thing is going to work, will work, has worked to some degree. And when it comes back full steam ahead, it's something that can be viable. It's an alternate that can be viable, and we're looking forward to it. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. It proves that it's mission complete. PJ wouldn't have probably been in this position if it hadn't been for the XFL. And I mean, I think he killed it. Like Sheena's going to talk about, he fit in seamlessly. And I mean, there was a couple of mistakes in there, obviously the interceptions and whatnot, but yeah, I mean, just, you couldn't ask for a better job from him coming in. Like you said, with 90 minutes notice. I mean, could you imagine that? Could you imagine going to bed Saturday night, not knowing if you were starting the game Sunday?
I couldn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just goes to show his preparedness, it's not that he didn't maybe need to know, but he was prepared nonetheless. And it's great. It's a great way to kind of further that story. And you never know. We're going to talk to Sheena quick in a second here and discuss potentially theories behind maybe giving Teddy a little bit more of a rest. I know Teddy was cleared. He practiced fully today. But maybe just maybe it's time to maybe think about your investment long-term. And if the knee is having more issues, roll PJ out there a little bit more and see potentially what you might be able to get for him in terms of other building blocks for your team.
Yeah, you got a lot of injuries right now. A lot of QB. You got Teddy, you got Drew Brees. We had Joe Burrow go out. I mean, it was like a bloodbath the last couple weeks.
I still think Jimmy Garoppolo back in San Fran's out too. So I mean, and in Dallas, we're going to go back to Dallas. Discuss Dallas.
And Nick Foles too. They don't know if he's going to play on Sunday either.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of quarterback holes in the league, and this kind of goes to the whole. This is like an after effect of COVID, where we didn't have the preseason to warm these guys up and get them in the flow of things. And we saw a lot of injuries to begin with. We're still seeing some significant injuries now. And maybe it's a situation where Carolina just saves their investment and goes, let's just pause for a second. Let's keep, let's make sure our $20 million that he's getting paid next year doesn't go like into a money pit and protect that. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen going forward? But with that being said, moving on. You want to bring in Sheena now, or do you want to
Yeah, let's go to Sheena, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our big Mr. Celebrity on the podcast.
Yeah. So after this, we're gonna bring in Sheena quick right now. We're gonna pay some bills real quick. Sheena will join us after the break, and we'll discuss more Panthers stuff. Sheena Quick joining us again from 1340 a.m. in Carolina. How you doing, Sheena?
I'm excellent. How are you guys?
We're great. It
was a big weekend for us XFL fans watching the Carolina Panthers. I did not realize until about 30 minutes before the game was going to start that we weren't going to get the game in Seattle. So I had to go on and find a illegal NFL stream and get it from my iPad to my TV. It was quite the freak out moment. How was the weekend for you?
It was great. We got to see what PJ Walker is about at the NFL level. Like I said before in my pregame, we've seen flashes of him, but to be fair, the situations when he would enter the game, it would be 4th and 10, or they'd be pinned back, and we didn't really get to see what he had to offer, and Sunday changed all of that.
What were your thoughts?
I thought he played well. I thought he was solid. I didn't want to get ahead of myself, and I think a lot of people would agree with me in that, the Detroit defense is in the bottom quadrant in almost every defensive category going into last weekend. And Coach Rule said after the game that he felt confident that either Will Grier or PJ Walker both would have played well under those circumstances. So again, we have such a small sample size, but I thought he did well.
He definitely had a couple of issues. I was watching with a lot of the XFL guys, and we were tweeting and stuff. And he had a couple of those interceptions. And I think it was you had tweeted, the post game that the coach had said, in a different circumstance that really could have cost us, just because, you don't want to throw 2 picks anyway, especially in the end zone. But to be fair on that, I said, the Panthers were 3-7 entering the game. Let's not put all the blame on PJ for some of the struggles maybe you guys have had.
Right. The red zone struggles have actually kind of subsided. But what I did think was kind of cool on Sunday is that it ended their third quarter drought. The Panthers had gone several games without scoring a touchdown in the third quarter. That's kind of a situation or a scenario that's very hard to simulate in practice. You have your red zone offense, you have your 2-minute offense, but you don't have your third quarter offense. So that was pretty good to see them get over that hump. Matt Rule said they didn't do anything differently. They just did things better.
I read that too. What was the reaction online? You talked about tapping into Panthers Twitter. We haven't quite done that yet. What was the reaction online you were seeing about the feedback that Panthers fans were giving towards PJ's performance?
Everyone was excited. Everyone was pumped. The story behind these guys before they hit the playing field makes it very easy for you to root for them. I didn't see any PJ detractors. Everyone was very excited to see what he had to offer because, like I said before, going into Sunday, there was a almost non-existent sample size. We really didn't know what he had to offer on the NFL level. And then the XFL, I saw that he was leading in passing yards and touchdowns, when the season was suspended. So I think he had a really, really warm reception. I saw some people that have followed me today, have PJ Walker QB1 as their screen names and things like that. So I think a lot of fans are very excited that he got a shot and got a chance to see got a chance to show what he had to offer. And the win was just the icing on the cake. It broke a 5-game losing streak.
The thing that killed me the most was, heading into the week, we knew Teddy was hurt. And it just was the fact that they wouldn't make a decision, right? Matt Rule wouldn't make a decision. It was day of, because I was on Twitter that morning, and he was going to play, then he wasn't, and he was active. He was on the field, kind of doing the testing his knee and stuff. I mean, are we living and dying that much by Teddy Bridgewater that it has to be that we couldn't have just made that decision on Friday and just kind of like let PJ know? I mean, why was it such a last minute decision?
Actually, he had been cleared by doctors to play. Matt Rule felt like it was just he made the decision to pull him. He didn't tell us why it was so late. I know a lot of them were on the sideline watching him throw and watching him warm up and things like that. Again, he was medically cleared to play, but they didn't want to take the chance. Now, as far as them not knowing because all 3 quarterbacks were active and on the field and warming up. So I'm not sure what went into that last minute decision other than the fact that he was medically cleared and it was a personal coach's decision that, ultimately decided whether or not he will play.
You're looking at the Panthers being, I think they're 4-7 now, Jay? Yeah, 4-7 now. This is not really a season in which the Panthers are going to contend. Is there any school of thought behind maybe sitting Teddy for the rest of the year and potentially looking at these 2 quarterbacks, both Greer and PJ Walker, as potential trade bait for another team that might need someone?
Now, the first half of that, I believe Teddy's going to play Sunday. He was a full participant today. All signs point to him actually playing on Sunday. But as far as trade bait, I don't think they're in a position to trade any quarterbacks away right now.
I know that Teddy's probably off the table. I don't see any team taking on that salary hit for next season for sure. I think he makes like $20 million next season. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see if maybe potentially they could roll one of these 2 quarterbacks out to kind of give other teams a look at them and potentially get some pieces to help them next season.
It would be particularly difficult for them to try to shop Will Greer. While, he and PJ have kind of, alternated, not even necessarily back and forth like PJ on, Will on each week. You never know who's going to be the backup quarterback until maybe the day before the game. But going into Sunday, Will Greer had not taken a game snap all season. PJ had taken a few, here and there. Like I said before, facing 4th and forever, pinned on your own 15-yard line type situations. But there's not enough film on Will Greer to shop him, in my opinion.
What did you think, if you had seen a lot or a little of PJ on the Roughnecks and, he was like the MVP of the league by far, and they were, that team was just crushing it when everything went to a halt. A lot of people predicted that they would just, go undefeated this season. What did you think? I mean, obviously he fit in. I mean, did he fit in? What did you think of kind of how he played and how the team rallied around him?
I think he fit in well. One of the advantages to having someone like Teddy Bridgewater on your roster is someone who had to be ready when the opportunity came back around to him, particularly with the Saints after an injury that a lot of people thought would end his career. In Teddy, more so than a QB1 mentor, you have someone that literally lived, be ready, be ready, be ready. And that's something that he has drilled into the media as one of the main topic when he's in the quarterback room is getting these guys ready. These guys meaning Will Greer and PJ Walker. I felt like PJ stepped into the role seamlessly. You could tell that the receivers and everything are comfortable. There weren't a lot of timing issues. There were not a lot of timing issues. You saw the 52-yard bomb to DJ Moore. So you wouldn't have known that there was any difference chemistry-wise, like the offensive line, the cadence, all of that stuff seemed like they had been playing together all season. If you take away the end zone interceptions, I think he had a very solid game. I want to say he was perfect on passing attempts at one point in the game. Don't quote me on the number, because I forget. But I remember looking at it, and he had like a really high QBR early on. So he didn't have to get any jitters out. I didn't feel like I saw any jitters.
Post game, what was the general feeling around the players that you might have talked to regarding PJ's performance?
Everyone, what's funny is these guys with COVID, we don't get to see a lot of practice as much as we normally would, or that you just have to kind of rely on game film. But a lot of them were just like, oh, we expected him to come in and be ready. We expected that. That's what the expectation is. It's always next guy up. And PJ shared a really cool story about a dream that his mom had a year and a half to 2 years back, that he was starting for the Carolina Panthers. And at the time, he was in Indianapolis. So he said that on Sunday, both of their dreams came true. He started for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, it was definitely a long time. And that, and with the interceptions and everything, I mean, I think Mike Mitchell, I think, put the stat, he's an XFL writer, when PJ made, maybe that wasn't a good pass, or maybe that was a mistake. I think Matthew Stafford had like 154 starts, to PJ's first start, trying to go in. And so, I mean, there is going to be some learning, even with the jitters and stuff. I mean, you just can't. I think he did as well as he could for, literally first game NFL start, middle of the season, Lions or otherwise,
I agree. I think that's a fair assessment.
All right.
And then, so obviously Teddy's probably going to play this week. PJ just going back to backup, and is that what we're kind of expecting?
That's what we're kind of expecting. Matt Rule was very adamant. He's like, look, this is Teddy. Teddy is our starter. It's great that we have someone that can come in and spell him if necessary. But as long as Teddy is able to play, we're going to roll with Teddy.
Awesome. Well, I think that'll do it for our PJ Walker / Carolina Panthers update. Sheena, quick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Take it easy.
Oh man, Sheena is just the best. I'm glad she came on. I messaged her yesterday. I know she's busy running around. I do appreciate that, because I just said, hey, like Thanksgiving, like this is when we're recording, and if you can do it, that would be great. She called in. I really appreciate that. You couldn't ask for more.
It was last minute. I would have reached out. I did make the initial connection. I would have reached out, but I had a lot of work on my plate yesterday. So I'm glad. Thank you, Reed, for reaching out and grabbing Sheena. She's always a pleasure to talk to, and always brings some great insight that we don't have here on the Markcast, specifically about PJ and specifically about Carolina Panthers football. It's great.
Well, I like it because, I follow her now, and it is like, she's at the stadium, she's doing everything. I mean, I like that. I like feeling like we've got, people in positions to, help us out. We're trying.
So we're trying our best here. And it's great to have someone, even with COVID going on, still doing her work. And we definitely hats off to her for keeping us informed. So moving on.
So I talked about my utter surprise that The Rock and Danny did not tweet and congratulate, PJ Walker on his victory at the Carolina Panthers. But what did The Rock tweet, Paul, this week?
Wow, that was cool. That was cool. I mean, it was your idea. It was. You're like, what you should do? You should just grab some of his tequila and pop a little tweet up.
Yeah, to give some context, last week on the show, I said it was Paul's birthday. We recorded it was going to be Paul's birthday. I said, here's the deal. The Rock retweets everybody that posts stuff with Terramana. Rock loves Terramana. I want to talk about him and Jay Glazer later. That whole thing was just chaotic as well. But I said, for your birthday, I know you're not a big drinker right now, but if you post it, I don't care if you drink it or not. If you just buy the bottle and you post it, The Rock will retweet you. And if I was Stephen Colbert, you know how he used to have like the thing, like the mission accomplished or like the mission complete, so big banner would drop. That's what I would do right now.
Yeah, and you should, because I got a retweet and a happy birthday from the world's biggest movie star. That was insane. Like when that happened, people, like I'm tied into Yankees Twitter, of course, with my, Yankees fandom. People were like, are we not acknowledging that there's a budding friendship here between Sanchez and The Rock? Let's not go that far. But it was definitely awesome to be wished a happy birthday from The Rock, a guy I grew up watching, wrestling in the wrestling ring when I was in college. Mimicking him, his catchphrases, his looks, all that stuff. You can't do that.
I can never do the eyebrow.
Not trying to do the eyebrow thing. It's not working for you. You look like an alien, friend. You look like an alien.
You also got also the Terramana Tequila also wished you a happy birthday separately. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
a couple days later. But hey, it's fine. It's okay. I'll take it. It's just I thought it was really cool to get the retweet from The Rock, and it was like all of a sudden, everybody retweeted that one, of course, but everybody came to my stuff and they retweeted that too. And of course, I tagged the XFL Markcast podcast Twitter account in that. And again, Reed, that was your idea, so we want to give you the props on that one, definitely. Hit the wrong button. I do this a lot on Willhouse. I hit the wrong button.
You sent me that tweet and you said, I've always said you are a creative genius, and I'm going to print that tweet out. It's holidays this week, but I'm going to print it out and I'm going to frame it and I'm going to hang it right here, blow it up. Paul telling me I'm a creative genius.
I've said that to Will many times. I'm like, Reed's a marketing genius. People don't realize how sharp Reed is the marketing. He knows how to promote. And so hats off to you, Reed, for getting me a birthday retweet from the great one.
Speaking of The Rock, let's do the Jay Glazer thing just while we're at it here. So The Rock last night, this got posted. A lot of people, I think, thought maybe they would break some news about the XFL and stuff. Jay Glazer, he's a big NFL reporter or whatever. I guess he does like a glass with Glazer every week. I don't know. But it's like an IGTV thing he does. And like he says on there, spoiler alert, there wasn't a lot of XFL stuff, but it was a 40-minute video. I watched the whole thing from start to finish. So if anyone was thinking like, oh yeah, I was going to go check that thing out, I did the work for you. You don't need to watch it. But Jay, I guess he normally does like a glass of wine and like interviews people on IGTV. Seems very odd. But he had The Rock on and they did Terramana Tequila and they talked. But they did talk a little bit about the XFL. It took them. So how many Instagram followers does The Rock have, Paul? Like a million, like 300 million, right? Highest followed person in the world. Took him like 4 minutes to figure out how to actually get the thing to work on the IGTV. So I was thinking, I don't know if this was him that retweeted you. Maybe it was somebody else because on his account, because The Rock literally couldn't Jason.
Now you're taking it out of now I feel like maybe it was like Danny or something. Not that it wouldn't be flattering if Danny retweeted it, but you know what I'm saying? Like now you're like, no.
That would be like if you were a fan of our podcast, and I'm not going to say their name, but it's like if you were a fan, it tweeted me last night and said, hey, I just got a follow from the official XFL Twitter account. And I had to tell him, no, man, that's not the official XFL Twitter account. Like it was like XFL _, whatever the thing. And I said, that's not the official Twitter, dog. Bro. And he was like, okay, thank you for not publicly shaming. So I didn't say,
you're publicly shaming him.
We didn't say the name though. We just a listener of the podcast, just a listener of the podcast. But anyway, The Rock was on there. He did talk about getting excited to buy the XFL. So it was kind of cool, but it was like a lot of talk about Terramana Tequila and The Rock starting that. And Jay Glazer's got some new supplement thing out because he's training people. I don't know. Jay Glazer's an interesting guy. What do you think about him?
Actually, if I name drop here, I've actually interviewed Jay Glazer twice. He does great work for veterans. We did a story with him. How a lot of these there's a group that he has that he comes and he works them out. They're all veterans.
MVP he was talking about.
Yeah. It's a great thing that he does. I've actually sat in a class and had veterans come up and talk. It's not only do they do working out, not only do they do physical exercise, but they also talk about PTSD and mental illness issues that affect our veterans, which is a very important thing that we should discuss a lot. Is that these veterans come back and they have scars that are not necessarily physical, but mental and emotional. So this is a great thing that I love Jay Glazer. I think he's done great things for the veterans community. Hats off to that guy. He's a great, great guy.
Yeah, but it was good. So anyway, just in case you're curious, I just wanted to put, in case you were going to check out The Rock's thing on Jay Glazer's, save the time. I watched the whole 40 minutes this morning and there was about 2 minutes of XFL and he just said, yeah, I was excited when I bought it. But then he also said that the highlight of his career was when he joined the Nation of Domination and he told Vince McMahon, give me the microphone for 2 minutes. And he went out there and cut that. Remember when he joined the Nation and he was like, it's not a race thing. It's a respect thing. And he said that was like him grabbing the brass rings. And that was the highlight of his career. So I thought that was interesting.
I remember that promo, because he didn't understand why people hated him. Like people, we were in a situation, wrestling was in a weird situation where good guys were getting booed and bad guys were getting cheered. I mean, Steve Austin, case in point there. And when The Rock started to come out with this ridiculous, I remember that blue-green thing that he had.
And he locked to the ring, just like, it's not even,
like the smiling, happy baby face stuff that, the happy good guy. And people were like, die, Rocky, die. So he turned bad guy. And he, the line where he says, Rocky Maivia is a lot of things, but sucks isn't one of them. Like, it was a great promo. And that's kind of what launched everything, where all it takes is one thing where people can realize, and you talk about Steve Austin, for example, where Vince hired him, and you watch Steve Austin's stuff from ECW before he joined WWE after being fired from WCW. You could tell he could talk, but Vince hires Steve, doesn't know what he has in Steve, puts him with Ted DiBiase, who's a great talker, and then all of a sudden, thanks to Triple H doing the curtain call, Steve Austin gets bumped up, wins the King of the Ring, and drops Austin 316. Austin 316, and it was off to the races. So I think the message here is like giving people that one shot, and them jumping on. So
like PJ getting the shot, man. But that's the thing for people just to realize, like if you're a fan of The Rock, if you didn't watch him in all his wrestling, there was a time when people would chant "Die Rocky Die" when he came to the ring. So just to conceptualize, I know because not everyone here is because The Rock is this mega star now, where people used to think, The Rock was a wrestler, that moved to acting, right? Well, now like wrestling is just a small footnote in his, illustrious career, right? But it's crazy to think that that's where he used to come from.
And I mean, I think that kind of goes to the point where what we're seeing now with WWE, where someone else recently of Samoan heritage realized the crowd didn't like him. So he decided to go ahead and embrace that bad guy side. And now it's probably the most interesting thing that man has done since being in the Shield thing.
Yeah,
so
we're talking about Roman Reigns.
And we're not fans of Roman Reigns, but while we're not fans, we understand how much better it is for him to be in this role. So those kind of little things, little changes here and there, catapult. And did you want to play this clip from Jay Glazer, the one you sent me?
No, I just remind me about that. The interesting thing that you just finish up with The Rock and all this stuff and whatever. Danny posted this little snippet on it was like her Instagram story, like, good morning, had this perfect cup of coffee, and she had the XFL notebook there. I'm like, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna take the time to do that, congratulate PJ Walker. Like, give me a break. If you're gonna go on there and do that, there's no reason not to. I mean, it's crazy. I just couldn't believe that. So I'm like, obviously, she has the time, right? She did that. I would have said, congratulations, PJ, and put your freaking XFL notebook there.
Yeah, you could have congratulated PJ and been like, and used that in a situation where you're like, look, this is what we do. We get players ready for this, for the NFL, where Vince tried in his first XFL iteration back in the 90s, early 2000s. He tried to compete with the NFL, but the XFL now is not trying to compete with the NFL, and that's why it's successful. And you could have just rode that PJ story and been like, look, see, this is us. This is what the XFL's done.
It's crazy. I just couldn't believe that when she saw that, because I think I had just kind of realized that or put two and two together that nothing had been posted about that, and then I see that and I'm like, come on, what is the deal here? They did. There's not a lot here. We don't need to read the whole thing. They did wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. The XFL sent out this big thing, just talking about, hey, we're fans, and it was this whole big thing. Thanksgiving is one of our favorite times of year. We're thankful. We're working hard. They did say they're 221 inches away, because I guess it's we got to wait all of 2021 for the XFL to come back, but. Again, you're doing that stuff. You obviously, I get it's a whole skeleton crew right now. There's not a lot of people there, but you obviously had someone that wrote that letter and emailed that out, right? The Rock didn't write that, but someone wrote that, right? And The Rock, said, okay. I just couldn't believe that they didn't the PJ thing. I know I'm being incredulous about that, but it really surprises me.
They should have the marketing that they've done. They've never let many things fall through the cracks, and it seems like that would be one big thing that they wouldn't let fall through the cracks, is that there's a success story from this thing that they invested in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it was good though, because they had, people were saying, like, I think Mark on Mark at News Hub was saying, like, it's been a little while since we've heard from XFL, so it was nice to like get that right, just to have like some acknowledgement, like, hey, we're working on stuff. But I did think that was pretty surprising that they took the time to do that and not other things.
Definitely. Other things that they've done, though, they have renewed the lease for Globe Life in Dallas for the Renegades. So that was something that happened last week, I believe.
Yeah, and so Josh Davis talked about this, and he had the court documents with News Hub, and he was saying how, like, they've been working on a lot of these leases the whole time. It's part of, restructuring and the bankruptcy and paying off the debts and all this. But I think this is the first one that's like finally official, re-signed. It's a new lease. Like, you can go on, I think the News Hub article, they even have it broken down. Like, you can see what they're paying per the field per year and per the clubhouse per year and per, like, because they pay for, like, in the practice facilities, but it's all on there. And so, yeah, there had been some talk that maybe the Renegades weren't going to come back to Dallas. I think that was crazy talk, but yeah, the Renegades are going to be there to stay put.
Football is huge in Texas, so it definitely is open for two XFL teams there. And I think they'd be dumb to not jump on staying in Houston as well, because I mean, the Renegades were the face of the XFL, we talked about that with Sheena, how Houston was going to run away with the league. Pretty much everyone expected Houston was going to win the league last year, and PJ Walker was the assumed MVP. So it's good to see that they're going to continue their base in Dallas, base in Texas, I should say, with two teams there, and Dallas definitely keeping the Renegades. I still stick to the idea that the Wildcats probably are relocating, but we'll see.
Also, they dumped a ton of money in that Globe Life field, whatever they call it, Globe. It's where they're next to, in Arlington, they're next to where the Cowboys play. We walked by there on the way to WrestleMania, but they dumped a ton of money into that because it was the baseball stadium for the Texas
Rangers, yes.
Rangers. And so, they basically like dropped a football field in the baseball. It's a really weird configuration. Like, if you see it on TV, if you look at the seating charts, like I do, because I'm a weirdo, but it would be very surprising for them not to renew that with all the money that's been put in there. So
definitely. And I mean, exactly. They don't have any, I think they don't have any more multi-use stadiums anymore, because the last one they had was Oakland's, and now the Raiders have left, so there's no need to, it was really annoying. You watch Raiders preseason football in the Oakland Alameda Stadium, you'd see like the infield as part of the football team. Oh my God, this is so tacky.
Yeah, it's weird.
They've gotten away from that kind of thing where they're using multi-use fields, and the Rangers now have a new ballpark, so it's good to see something going on with this, and I'm glad to see that they've renewed their lease and they're going to stay in Dallas.
Yeah. One other thing about the XFL I thought was interesting, and we'll talk about the United Football Players too with coming up with the TSL, but they did release a statement. I thought this was really interesting that I saw come across. UFPA is United Football Players Association. The UFPA is working with legal counselors to ensure that XFL players who did not file a claim before the deadline of the bankruptcy are going to get a payout. And basically they're saying that if you were like an XFL player and you didn't, because I guess there was like a cutoff if you were owed some money or something from the initial bankruptcy, to basically to reach out to them, to Kenneth Farrow and the rest of the crew there, and that they were going to help take care of that. And I just thought that was interesting because obviously, while we're looking forward to 2022, there are still some stones and things that we need to turn over and figure out, and all the old, tie up some loose ends. But yeah, they're looking out, and we'll get into the UFPA with the spring league here too. But yeah, they're looking out if you're an XFL player, which I thought was cool, because like maybe you're someone that either like didn't know what was going on or didn't. I don't know why you wouldn't know that the bankruptcy was closing, but if you did. So it's just kind of nice to see Kenneth Farrow looking out for everybody. He was a former Dragons player, him and the rest of the crew there at the UFPA. They follow us on Twitter. They're fans.
He was a former Dragons player?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I only really paid medium attention to, I think it was, who was I paying attention to? Besides the Wildcats, of course, DC, because we went to, to the DC game, but I didn't even know that. So that's a insight that I didn't know.
Yep.
So
there you go. Just dropping nugget bombs.
Dropping nuggets of knowledge.
Nuggets of knowledge.
Nuggets of knowledge. We need that on a t-shirt.
Nuggets of knowledge. Well, it's XFL ramblings and general thoughts. That is the tagline of the Markcast.
That's true. So we talked about it last week. There was a lot of fallout on this. The TSL, we interviewed both Kent Shelby and Brian Woods. The TSL, of course, there's a little bit of scatter here that Fox might be interested in buying this thing.
Yeah, that was interesting. Matthew posted that. He covers XFL for, don't quote me on this. He covers them for News Hub, Matthew Shapiro, and he is saying, according to Kaplan Sports, Fox is negotiating to help buy the TSL, which is interesting. You know, Brian Woods had negotiated the deal with FS1. They did. This was the first time ever that the Spring League games were like really publicized the way that they were. And the big takeaway that a lot of people had from this is, if Fox is interested in the TSL, are they not interested in airing the XFL games?
It's a good question to bring up.
I don't know. I mean, but that was kind of the takeaway.
That's kind of a good thing to think about because, I mean, with they're going to renegotiate all these deals anyway. So maybe this is a way for them to kind of either lowball the XFL or just say, you know what, we've got our own football league that we're doing on our own thing. I don't know if this is a good idea, and I'm gonna explain why. Whenever TV stations get in the practice of providing, when they get in the practice of owning things, like for example, I'm going to bring this up wrestling again. When TBS and TNT Turner owned WCW. They were a TV company putting on a wrestling product as opposed to a wrestling company putting on a TV product. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where you have a TV company putting on a football product as opposed to a football company putting together a TV product.
It's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people, and this is just wild, rampant speculation, but a lot of people assumed, you know, XFL was on Fox and ABC before with ESPN and all that stuff. They're like, well, clearly we're going to go back. And that might not be the case. I mean, we've talked in the past about XFL going to Netflix or Hulu or, you know, trying to get on, you know, YouTube TV. I mean, there's plenty of different landing places, but it is interesting if Fox, you know, because I'm sure they could get the Spring League or a portion of the Spring League for a fraction of what it would probably cost, you know, that The Rock and Danny would want. I mean, you know, I don't think, and I think even Brian Woods in his interview last week said, you know, they're like the D League, right? So if the XFL is like a B League, right, you know, obviously they're not the NFL. They're definitely going to be worth a little bit more than the Spring League would be. So maybe Fox is looking at it that way too, as, hey, we could get this for just a fraction of the cost and put the games on FS1 to kind of fill, you know, game time.
I'm looking at some of the things that, speaking of the UFPA and the Spring League, I'm looking at some of the things that were brought up.
The response
by the players. The UFPA, of course, related some issues that, you know, we've just discussed with Kent Shelby where there was limited testing, and Brian Woods did acknowledge that there was limited testing. He did say that, yeah, we kind of, you know, he didn't say they dropped the ball, but he, you know, he alluded to it. He kind of softballed and said, yeah, we, you know, there was some stuff that was going on in terms of their COVID testing, their protocols that weren't great. But then, of course, he kind of handed it off to the players, like, well, the players were going off campus and doing this. And of course, when you interview Kent first and Kent says, well, the reason the players were doing this, you know, you talk to Brian after Kent, basically. That's the way the interviews rolled.
Yeah.
We talked to Brian after Kent, and Brian put the onus on the players for going off campus and going and picking up food somewhere else or doing other things somewhere else. But Kent, his response to that before even Brian said it was, the meals weren't adequate.
Yeah.
Was this brought up in the UFPA thing? I'm looking right here that there were, I don't see much on the food situation.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Brian did say that was like a personal preference, right? If you were someone like Kent Shelby that has played in the CFL, that has played in larger leagues, you might be expecting, right, you know, a little bit more being taken care of. You know, it'd be like if you were an actor and you were used to like maybe more medium-sized budget movies and getting like a nice green room and a trailer and all that stuff, and then you went and did a spot on something that was smaller, and you go, well, this is not what I'm used to, which is not an incorrect assessment. But if you're someone that, you know, is maybe not used to the nicer thing, you know, it's all relative. At a point, that was what Brian's argument was that it was all relative depending on how you were looking at the situation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's really hard because it's really hard to make that analogy, because I know there are some actors that, you know, for example, Eric Roberts, who is, you know, he's taking all these little jobs now. He's got over 500 credits to his name. He's taking all these little $250 a day jobs here and there because, you know, he appreciates the art of the acting, so to say. And maybe that's what Brian was trying to get across, is like, well, you're playing football, you know, you understand that we're not working with the NFL's budget, but at the same time, like, if you're expecting to lock these players in and keep them COVID free, you have to give them all the resources to stay locked in. You can't just say, well, Firefest sandwiches for everybody, and expect them not to go to Whataburger when you're not feeding them adequately.
Also, the other argument they said, or the UFPA, and I've heard too, is a lot of the players, because they did kind of a showcase before the actual spring league started. And so some of the players that maybe didn't get signed by a team were encouraged to stick around for free in the hopes of maybe getting picked up. Like, hey, well, why don't you stick around for a little bit? And then, you know, maybe we'll get you on a team later on. And so a lot of those players maybe didn't have adequate lodging. And then they were in turn staying with some of the players that were on teams, also, you know, giving more credence to like COVID issues and things like that. So it's interesting because, you know, on one hand, we have all these issues with the spring league, UFPA getting involved, all these different things. And then the other side, you have Fox that's interested in like potentially buying this company or you know, a stake in it. So it's interesting to see both sides of that. And I just wanted to touch on too, overwhelming, response to the podcast. I was really, you know, a lot of listens and views. I know I was expecting more of like a lot of comment fighting. I didn't really know what to expect, right? I didn't know like, hey, we're going to post this on YouTube. Are people going to like, you know, give it a thumbs down? If you're whatever, are you going to be negative? Everyone I've talked to, including, you know, Dorothy, listened to the whole thing, and she thought that both sides had, you know, valid points. I emailed Brian afterward. I said, thank you very much for coming on. You know, we had good response. And I said, just so you know, our listenership did feel like positively towards what you had to say. I mean, I will say that. I think that it was overwhelming, that they understood obviously where Kent was coming from. And then they also did understand where Brian, you know, they got both sides of it. That maybe both sides weren't right, but they also both weren't wrong. Like it was a mix in there.
There's a middle ground here. And I think that, and I'm not saying, you know, I'm not trying to lay blame. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the most well-rounded story. Yeah. Do I feel like we may have gone a little soft on Brian? I do feel like we may have gone a little soft. I think we could have held him to the fire a little bit harder. But the point was to address every concern. That's why we talked to Kent first, to get the notes from what we wanted to bring to Brian and discuss things with Brian. And I think, honestly, it feels like, this is my viewpoint, is that the truth is always in the middle. Yeah. There's always three sides of the story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. And the truth is always kind of in the middle, where perception alters your side of the story. Where the truth is, could Brian have done more? Yes. Could the players have possibly spoke up their concerns directly to Brian instead of, you know, maybe posting a YouTube video that they're now taking down? Possibly.
And apologize for it, to be fair. Supposedly, again, and
Maine has apologized for his video?
Yeah, it was, I can't remember his real name, but yeah, but he did remove the video, and supposedly, because when we had talked with Brian had not, according to Brian, had not watched the video when we spoke to him, which I thought was odd, but that was what he said. And I guess he either continued then to choose to watch the video or had seen the video and reached out to the player, and they apologized and took the video down. So that's where that's at, is that player has removed the video.
It's clear that, and then the player sent me a direct message. He's like, after our interview with Brian, he was like, "Yay, man, I'm good. Like, I want to move past this." I can actually read the message right now.
That'd be great. Let me and then while you pull this up, I know a lot of people. I will say I've had messages about this. Want to know about Brian promised us merchandise. Not that we this was not like promised, we for the interview. In the course of the interview, I had mentioned that I was a Jousters fan, and Brian had said, "Hey, that's crazy. Who the heck in the world would be a Jousters fan?" And Brian had said to his own accord that he was going to send us some jerseys and merch. This was not at all like a tit for tat or anything like that.
No.
But I messaged Brian afterward when I sent him the email. I said, "Hey, I don't even know if you were serious about that or not. If you are, here's our address." And he said, "Absolutely. It was a pleasure to come on." And that once they get back, because he's still contending they're going to do the championship game. And he said, when we get back from Thanksgiving, we're going to get ready for that. And he said, "I'm going to have the equipment guy send you some merch." So I know, I know Kenny and a couple other people had messaged me like, "Oh, I can't believe Brian was going to send you that merch." So that's what we'll see. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could never come. It could be like my PJ Walker jersey, but that's the story. And Brian promised that out of the goodness of his heart, just because I think we were, fair. I think we were fair to both sides.
So Poop Main, sorry, I just can't get over saying that. He said, "Hey, I got to step away from it for right now. That's all I'm going to say on the matter." And of course, shortly after he said that to me, that's when he pulled the video down. So I'm thinking there was a dialogue that happened. Brian probably checked out the video, reached out, said, "Hey, let's discuss this. Let's figure this out." And again, there needs to be a dialogue, and there needs to be both sides coming and conceding something. Specifically, if the TSL wants to run a league without COVID issues, testing needs to improve, and they need to make sure that the bubble can be secured, where the players need to kind of, if they're not getting if they're not getting what they need to speak up. They need to speak up before a video gets posted, and then everything gets brought to a halt.
And just context too, thinking about like you were saying, we're reaching out. The video wasn't like Hollywood produced, but it was like produced. I mean, they were like, cause it wasn't like some guy just took a phone and was like, "This stinks," and then uploaded it. I mean, there was like graphics and things, but I mean, there was time and thought put into the video. It wasn't like it was just like a spur of the moment thing. One last note about Spring League. Greg Parks did reference us. He did a whole write-up about the Spring League, about the closure and what that meant. If you go to xflboard.com, there's a great comprehensive just kind of breakdown. Greg covers wrestling for the PW Torch. I've listened to him for years. But it was nice that he, for someone that I have listened to for years talk about wrestling with Wade Keller on the Torch, he quoted our interview with Brian and said, according to the XFL Markcast, and these are the things, and it was quotes from the thing. And I thought, Paul, like we did something here. Like we really did something that other writers actually referenced, which I thought was cool.
I think it was good that we actually, Reed actually did all of the legwork to get Brian on. I tried to get the Poop Main guy on.
Yeah, no, you did. I mean, it was like a dual. It just one worked out, and it was a dual threat to try to get people.
We were trying to get people on to discuss this because we knew it was a big issue and we knew that it was coming on. So it's good to see that, we're getting the story out there and there's a dialogue happening. That was the goal of the whole thing, was to get people talking and get things worked out. And get things kind of squared away to where the TSL, even if it doesn't come back for the championship game, and I really don't think it's going to, even if the TSL comes back, that everybody's needs and desires are met.
Speaking of the bubble, and to segue here to our next story, so we're shifting some of our alt football focus now to this fan-controlled football team. I think the title, I want to have the title of the episode be like fan-controlled football fandom, maybe, because is that a mouthful?
A lot of Fs.
That's a lot of Fs. But we're all in on this now. But the point is, okay, TSL maybe didn't have the best bubble. It seems as though this fan-controlled football league, which we've talked about before, now there's a lot of chatter about it. I think we started part of this. They have a very serious bubble. I've been reading about all this, that their stuff where they're going to have all the players. If you're participating in this league and you step out of the bubble, you will not be allowed back in. They're being very thorough about that, because I think they saw now, right? They're learning from what happened earlier this year with a similar, smaller scale football league, and saying like, we definitely cannot have this happen to us as well.
Yep. And I mean, I think everybody's learning from mistakes. That's the whole point of this. I think that's kind of like what we're getting out of this COVID thing, is like, what's his name from the Jazz, Rudy Gobert, at a press conference decided to be a little smart ass and start touching microphones at the press conference after it was done. Start touching all these microphones. And guess who the first NBA player to be positive for the COVID virus was?
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
So it's just like we're always learning from our mistakes. And I could get on another tangent about mistakes, especially here in LA County.
Yep.
Don't close down the restaurants. But we have to learn from our mistakes somehow, some way. I'm irritated by this, and I don't go out to restaurants often, but I have friends in the restaurant industry. I mean, one of my ex-girlfriends is heavily involved in the restaurant industry. She is out of a job again because of this nonsense. Because LA County, and I'm amped about this. I need to talk about this.
That's good.
3% of the cases in LA County, 3%, small cases. You're talking about 100 people, 3 people got COVID from a restaurant. 3% of the cases of COVID in LA County come from restaurants. So why are they shutting down the restaurants in grocery stores?
Isn't it people congregating outside of the restaurants and like the tables and stuff? Isn't that the rationale?
But it's still 3%. Do you understand? Like there's still 3%.
I know.
If the data were higher, sorry, I'm going off of those.
Paul Williams, fan of the show, works at Safeway, and he's the assistant manager there. He would say the same thing. That he has not had none of his employees have ever had any cases of COVID, and they deal with thousands of people a day. But
the data here in LA County says 15% of COVID cases come from the grocery store, and that's the leading cause of COVID cases. And I'm not disparaging the grocery industry at all. I had family members who worked for years in the grocery industry. I know that they're essential, and I appreciate everything they do. But they didn't have the time to shut down, and grocery stores didn't have the time to shut down during this. Yeah. They had to keep going and keep working and keep figuring it out so everybody else could follow their protocols. They've never had the time to shut down and go, okay, let's put filtration systems in, and let's learn from what other people are doing. It's a shame, and that's it's going to keep going. It's going to keep going.
So back to this Fan Control Football League. I appreciate that. So we now officially, I put up a Twitter poll. We have a team. We have a team for the Fan Control Football League. I didn't go on this on my own this time. I learned from the Jesters. I put on our Twitter, I said, who's our team going to be? It's like the Glazer Boys, it's the Beasts, it's the Zappers, and then it's the Wild Aces. And our listeners came through. They voted. We are the Beasts, which I think is great. That Beast team is owned all together by Mike Tyson, Marshawn Lynch, and then Miro, wrestler, which is great because we've been talking about this and trying to get Miro. I think Miro is afraid to come on the podcast. I'm going to start a Twitter feud with him and basically make fun of him until he comes on. But
come on, Miro.
I mean, what else? I mean, AEW's taping once a week. I don't know what else you're doing right now. Hanging out with Lana in the off time. But I think I'm excited about this. We're the Beast. I voted for our logo. The reason why I wanted to make this,
ridiculous logo, by the way.
Well, yeah. So basically, the Fan Control Football League, you can vote for what you want. They're going to do. I want to get into the rules here before we move on. You can vote for all the different logos and everything. And some of the Beast logos are like really good. Like they're really nice drawn, like wolves and monsters and stuff. And then there's this like squiggly line, like smear face. It's like a 2D.
It was done in MS Paint, to be honest with you.
It's really bad. Even when they submitted it, because I could follow Fan Control Football League on Twitter. The guy was like, can I please talk to whoever submitted this logo? Like, seriously, can we please like make sure that you're mentally like, okay? But if the guy, I want to make this the thumbnail for the episode. I want to have the Fan Control Football League and I want to have this squiggly face logo because I want to interview the guy that made this logo. I want him on, this is who I want on the podcast.
Yes, I want to talk to you. Why did you like take a piece of toilet paper and like scan it in and then just like, it's so bad.
Yeah, that's really
bad.
But
it's so good.
But I want that to be, and if it's not the logo, I'm making hats for the Markcast and we're going to sell the alternate Beast logo hat. But so I think this is good. For us, we need a team for this. We got Tyson. That's great, right? He's fighting this weekend. He's back in the news, right? He's boxing. We've got Marshawn Lynch. He's giving out turkeys for Thanksgiving. He's doing good. And then we've got Miro. I mean, we've got a powerhouse team, and we're with the beast. Did you see? First off, too.
By the way, Mike Tyson's going to win this weekend.
Yeah, I think so. Fan Control Football League did reach out. If you're a Spring League player, the tryouts happened over the weekend. If you were a Spring League player that got let go because of all the bankruptcies and everything, they were saying that you could come do a tryout for free. They did like a big open tryout in Atlanta, I believe. And so they're trying to like carry the mantle. And again, people asking, why do we care about TSL? Why do we care about Fan Control Football? It's because a lot of these players are going to be in the XFL when that comes back, because it's just how it's going to work. But I want to get your take on some of these rules real quick before we move on from this.
Seems like a fantasy football, like live fantasy football league. And apparently you're going to be able to keep some players from the previous week, but every week fans are going to be able to choose 2 quarterbacks, 5 skill positions, offensive line unit, defensive unit. So basically what it looks like is, they're going to keep 5 players or 6 players, if you count the tight end, together, unless you count the tight end as a skill position. You're going to keep these units together. Like there's going to be 4 different offensive line units and 4 different defensive units. And you'll basically be able to pick, okay, I want defensive unit 2 and offensive line unit 3. Is that what I'm basically doing? I don't know if this is a smart idea.
Well, it's interesting. So this is shout out to Fan Control Football News. They were covering TSL stuff, and now they writing on the wall. They read that and they're moving over. I think we brought a lot of this on. I'm always going to say that it was our story in the post, because we did the whole video about it. Fan Control Football retweeted it, and then the next week people are like, "Oh, this sounds like a great football league." I'm like, "Where do you think you came up with that?" But yeah, so basically, like every week, they're going to rotate the teams around. Yeah, it is very much like fantasy football. You're going to have like the beasts are going to have like a pool of players, and then you're going to go on and vote. The league is going to do the offensive line and balance defensive units, and they could obviously change over time with injuries, they're saying. But basically, like you said, that is a perfect analogy. You are going to kind of like draft your fantasy football team, but as opposed to it being fantasy football, they're actually going to go out on the field and play. I think that's the perfect. You killed it. Way to describe that.
I don't know. I don't know how many players. It says fans will also be able to vote to keep a certain number of players from the previous week. Are you going to go 1 player, 2 players? Because in some fantasy football leagues, you're able to carry maybe a player or 2 over from the previous year. So that's going to be interesting to see how many players can be carried over from one week to the next.
Yeah, and they're going to make their own field. It's 50 yards. They're each going to have an end zone. Football. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a little train wrecky. I think it's going to be a little like cluster F, but I think it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to get a lot of guys. I know a lot of the guys with the TSL are moving over. We had players that followed us with the podcast because we cover the TSL. I think a lot of these guys are interested in this. Any football is good football, and this is kicking off. This is literally going to be the time zone when the XFL was going to be before. They're going to kick off in February. They're going to go for 6 weeks, and then they're going to do championship games and all that stuff. So,
looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to it.
We just have a couple more. I don't want to go too long. I know I had a lot of stuff.
10 more minutes, Reed. 10 more minutes.
Yeah, this is bonus coverage. This is bonus coverage now. We did Spring League. We did Fan Control Football. Finishing up the football talk before we get to the Bachelor. Let's get all the football talk out of the way.
Yeah.
What do you think about Kyler Murray trademarking the name Hail Murray?
Come on, man. You did it once. and not you didn't do it. You didn't do it.
You mean like he didn't catch it?
Yeah, you didn't do it. DeAndre Hopkins did it. DeAndre Hopkins is the reason why that was successful. I mean, it had nothing to do with you. He beat 4 different defensive. I sound like Stephen A. Smith. He defeated 4 different defensive backs. It was all DeAndre Hopkins. It had nothing to do with you. Get out of here.
Yeah. No, this is crazy. I like Kyler Murray. I told Dorothy this because we were watching the game, with the Seahawks and the Cardinals. I said, I hate Kyler Murray, but if he was on the Seahawks, I would love him. Like, I just hate him because we don't have him.
He's like if you've seen Major League 2, there's a player on there called Jack Parkman. And Bob Uecker's character, the play-by-play commentator, I can't remember the name of that he plays, but Bob Uecker basically says, Jack Parkman now doing that little shimmy that drives all the women here in Cleveland crazy. And then when Parkman goes to the White Sox, he says, Jack Parkman now doing that shimmy that makes all the women here in Cleveland puke.
Oh,
so it's kind of the same thing where it's like, I don't like Kyler Murray, but if you're playing for the Seahawks, I would love Kyler.
I'd be all in on Kyler Murray. I really do. Like, he's just a little squirrely guy. But yeah, I thought this was crazy. He's trying to trademark this stuff. Get out of here.
It had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm standing by that.
So I listen to a lot of Good Morning Football now on the NFL Network. I don't know if you're aware of this show.
No.
It's like this.
Yeah.
They're in New York. It's like a round table.
Yeah. So I have a Madden. One of the Madden games has Good Morning Football as like this thing where they talk about when you're playing like as the player that you create and you're drafted and all that stuff. They have the people from Good Morning Football talk trash about your player or say good things about your player. It's funny how that works out.
Yeah.
Depending on how great of a player you are. So yeah, I've seen it. I'm aware.
So they did this thing like today or yesterday that Brady is like 0 for 19 with long passes, right? Like he's just been horrendous the last couple of weeks. They're getting trounced. I'm excited to watch them versus the Chiefs on Sunday. But my segue is that maybe if Brady isn't going to work out this year for the Buccaneers, he could go to the XFL because Brady did a double forward pass on Monday against the Rams.
That was illegal, by the way.
Huh?
It was illegal.
Yeah, but it was cool.
It was illegal. And the weird thing is like it's a dead ball foul. I don't understand. The refs screwed that whole thing up.
Yeah.
Going, wait. Why are they going to place the ball where he caught it?
Yeah.
Like, why are they what? Like, none of it made sense.
Yeah.
It should have been dead ball.
Yeah.
Where Brady threw the ball the second time.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened was Brady threw the ball, got batted back to him, and caught it. He threw it again. You can't re-throw a ball. You can only run or lateral it.
But you can in the XFL, which is, spoiler, if you've seen our episode logo, that is the diagram for the double forward pass. It is the XFL pass. Landry Jones of the Renegades was the only XFL player to ever do the double forward pass, basically doing the exact same thing Tom Brady did. But that's the Landry Jones special. Throw it, get it bounced back to you, and then throw it back again.
Yeah. It's legal in the XFL, not legal in the NFL.
So maybe Tom, that's what I'm saying, maybe Tom could go to the XFL. He's got like 2 more good years in him.
Possibly. So.
Last story.
Now it's time for your Bachelor stuff.
I tell you, we have fans writing in. I went on a little thing, whatever it was last week, we were watching. And I am going to put the little thing up for this one. Our fan, Brandon Krishbash, Krebash.
Yeah.
He posted, and he put this side by side up, I'm going to say. He goes, dude, it's obviously not Brandon Silvers. He would have had Botox. The conspiracy is that Brandon Silvers is parading on The Bachelorette right now with Taisha as the pseudonym Chase and Nick, because it's the same person. I'm going to put the side by side up. But he tweeted this, and he goes, so clearly it's not Brandon Silvers. Like, Brandon Silvers would have had more Botox. I go, this side by side makes me think even more it's Brandon Silvers.
Right. Yes, okay. Chase and Nick has a weird, like plumper lips than Brandon Silvers, but that's something that you could easily get done in like 4 hours at any place down here in Beverly Hills. You can get that done. That's easy.
Chase and Nick had a stellar episode. He got in a fight with the guy. He tried to throw somebody out of the cocktail party. He goes, what are you doing in here? It's a cocktail party. You can't be in a cocktail party wearing a robe, because the guy had on like a bathrobe. And then they did cage fighting. And this is why I had this. I'm sure you're wondering, why does Reed have a photo of him with Amy Dumas in the Google Doc? Amy Dumas, former WWE wrestler, Hall of Famer, women's champion. She was on The Bachelorette training them how to fight. It's all full circle.
I didn't see that. I just don't. I don't watch this. I mean, I will say this. I think The Bachelorette, that girl is attractive.
Oh, Taisha's, yeah, she's really pretty. Yeah, she's pretty.
And I was like, well, maybe I could start watching this because like she's very attractive. But I didn't even see this. Like, Lita was on there.
Yeah. So and I was going to ask you this because you know way more about like TV and filming and all the like. Right. I mean that. So if they're in a bubble, right, in The Bachelorette, they filmed in a bubble. So if Amy Dumas was going to go spend, let's say they were there hour and a half tops, training them like to wrestle, she had to do a 2-week quarantine for that spot on there, right?
They better paid her really well.
That's
they better
crazy.
paid her really well to sit and do nothing for 2 weeks and then go do this.
Yep. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, Brandon Silvers, we're not through this episode yet, so I don't know if Chase and Nick is still on or not. But yeah, he is. We have fans writing in and showing the side by sides.
The side by side, you're not making much argument for your case.
You're helping it. You're helping.
You're
really helping
believe that Chase and Nick and Brandon Silvers are the same thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how his week shakes out.
Yeah. Last thing before we go. I know the restaurants are closing in LA. You're probably going to be a while till you can go out on a date. But the next time you go out on a date, Paul, maybe you could rock, paper, scissors to see who covers the bill, like friend of the show, Chad Johnson.
Come on, Chad.
Chad Ochocinco, fan of the show. He's been on. We found him before. Now he's on all these NFL podcasts. He is rock, paper, scissoring women to... It's crazy.
That's did you hear how that kind of came out? Yeah, he's playing rock, paper, scissors with women to see who pays for the dinner bill. I mean, this is how you stay a millionaire. Yeah, I get it. But like, doesn't Chad just love McDonald's? Like, didn't he admit to taking women to dates at McDonald's before too?
He paid somebody $1,000 to give him a drive to McDonald's.
So he's going to pay someone $1,000 to give him a drive to McDonald's, but is then going to rock, paper, scissors with some girl for the... Come on, Chad.
Chad, be better. Be better, Chad.
Be better, Chad. Come on, man.
Anyway, I was laughing about that. You know, I said, I got the Google Doc is stuffed today, but we only have one Chad Ochocinco story.
I will say this. Last week, was it last week or the 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, as this airs, a week before my birthday.
Yep.
I did go out on a date, and she paid.
That was a good draw then.
She insisted to pay though. She was like, "You help me move." So she insisted to pay. And I consider it a date because, you know, there's history there. So anyway.
Well, I was just going to say, you must have lucked out with the rock, paper, scissors if she was going to pay.
I lucked out with a lot of things. It wasn't just the rock, paper, scissors. So with that being said, Chad, come on, man. Just pay for the date.
Yeah, Chad needs to get it together. But anyway.
All right. So next week, we'll have some more good stuff. Hopefully, we'll have some advanced news about the fan-controlled football. Maybe we'll have some more information about the TSL championship game coming. Cross our fingers. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't.
Yeah, and then I should have my PJ Walker jersey. It's coming. And then Brian, hopefully, will update us about our jobs. I mean, I could just be like, we could have all new jerseys up here. Who knows?
You could. You could have left the happy thing up for just another week, too, by the way.
Oh, I know. Well, I had to say, because Dorothy goes, you need to take it down. So, like, I had to put it up in a way that I could take it down and she could reuse it because we're very economical here. So, I took it down.
So, you could have left it up enough for another week. Especially after the Rock.
I got you the Rock to retweet you. I think we're good.
I think we're good on presents there. So anyway, we appreciate you listening. Again, xflshow.com/merch. We didn't plug anything.
I know. And I didn't we did have one review that came in that said we were like the best podcast ever. And I posted it on Twitter today. I won't plug this up. But yeah, xflshow.com/review. Please, support the podcast. But we literally did have a review that came in unsolicited and it said, this is the best podcast of all time. So
we like to hear that kind of stuff. Best podcast of all time. Not maybe on the Rogan level, but hey, we'll take it. We'll take your hyperbole and we'll run with it. So anyway, again, xflshow.com/merch and review us. We appreciate all of that. And thanks for listening. See ya.